Have you ever felt like you were being watched by someone who wasn't there? I never believed in such nonsense until I bought that damned portrait. It was a rainy Tuesday when I stumbled into that musty antique shop, seeking shelter from the downpour. The bell above the door jangled discordantly as I entered, shaking water from my coat. The shop was a maze of forgotten treasures and discarded memories. Dusty books piled haphazardly on sagging shelves. Tarnished silverware gleamed dully in the dim light. And there, in the back corner, barely visible in the gloom, stood an easel holding a large, ornate frame. I approached, drawn by an inexplicable urge. As I drew closer, the subject of the painting came into focus, a gaunt-faced man with piercing black eyes that seemed to follow my every move. His thin lips were curved in the barest hint of a smirk, as if he knew a secret I couldn't even begin to fathom. Interesting piece, isn't it? The shopkeeper's raspy voice made me jump. I hadn't heard him approach. "Who is he?" I asked, unable to tear my gaze from those hypnotic eyes. The old man shrugged, his weathered face creasing into a mysterious smile. "No one knows. Anonymous portrait from the 1800s. The artist didn't sign it either." I reached out, my fingers hovering just above the canvas. The air felt charged, almost electric. "How much?" The shopkeeper named a price that made me wince. It was far more than I could afford on my struggling writer's salary. And yet, "I'll take it," I heard myself say, as if someone else were speaking through my mouth. As I handed over my credit card, a chill ran down my spine. The old man's eyes glittered strangely as he wrapped the painting. "I'm sure you and the gentleman in the painting will get along famously," he said with an odd little chuckle. I should have run then. Should have left that cursed canvas behind. But something in those painted eyes called to me, promising secrets and stories beyond my wildest imagination. If only I had known the price of that promise. I hung the painting in my bedroom, opposite my bed. It was the last thing I saw before falling asleep and the first thing I saw upon waking. At first, I found it inspiring. As a writer, I'd spin elaborate tales about the mysterious man's life, imagining the secrets hidden behind those dark eyes. But then, about a week after bringing it home, I noticed something odd. It was subtle at first, so subtle I thought I was imagining it. The man's hair seemed a shade lighter, closer to my own chestnut brown than the inky black I remembered. I shrugged it off as a trick of the light, a product of my overactive imagination. But the next day, I could have sworn his chin was less pronounced, the hollow of his cheeks not quite so severe. I found myself standing in front of the mirror, comparing my features to his. It was ridiculous, of course. Paintings don't change. I told myself I was just tired, working too hard on my latest novel. But as the days passed, the changes became impossible to ignore. The man's nose gradually straightened, losing its aquiline hook. His lips filled out, the cruel smirk softening into a more neutral expression. And his eyes, those piercing, haunting eyes, began to shift from cold black to a familiar hazel. I became obsessed, spending hours staring at the painting, documenting every minute change. I stopped writing, stopped eating, barely slept. When I did manage to drift off, my dreams were filled with swirling colors and the sensation of drowning in thick, oily paint. Strange things began to happen around my apartment. Objects would move when I wasn't looking. I'd hear whispers in empty rooms. Once, I woke to find all the mirrors in my home had been turned to face the wall. But it was the painting that held my attention. With each passing day, the face on the canvas looked more and more like me, while my own reflection grew gaunt and hollow-cheeked. One morning, about 3 weeks after buying the painting, I woke with a start. Something felt off. The room seemed different somehow, though I couldn't put my finger on why. As I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. I froze in horror. The man in the painting was me. Not just similar, not just reminiscent, it was my face staring back at me from the canvas, perfect in every detail. But the eyes were still wrong. They held a malevolence, a hunger that sent chills down my spine. Panicked, I scrambled out of bed and rushed to the bathroom mirror. My reflection nearly stopped my heart. My face was gaunt, my cheeks hollow. My hair had darkened to an oily black, and my eyes were cold dark, glittering with an inhuman intelligence. I screamed, stumbling backward. This couldn't be happening. It wasn't possible. And yet, as I looked down at my trembling hands, I could see they were bonier, the fingers unnaturally long and pale. A laugh bubbled up from my throat, but it wasn't my laugh. It was high and cold, dripping with cruel amusement. I clapped my hands over my mouth, but the laughter continued, echoing in my head. "What's happening to me?" I whispered, but the words came out in a voice that wasn't my own. That's when I heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible, coming from the other room. From the painting. "Help me," it said in my voice. "Please, help me." Trembling, I walked back to the bedroom. The face in the painting, my face, was no longer impassive. It was contorted in terror, the mouth open in a silent scream. As I watched, a single tear rolled down the painted cheek. I reached up to touch the canvas, and the world tilted sideways. Colors swirled around me, and I felt myself being pulled forward, falling into the painting. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was my own face, now wearing that familiar cruel smirk, watching me from the other side of the canvas. When I came to, everything felt wrong. My limbs were stiff, immobile. I tried to blink, but my eyes wouldn't close. With dawning horror, I realized I could see my apartment, but from inside the painting. And there, standing before me with my body, was the entity that had taken my place. It smiled, using my face, my lips. "Thank you for the gift," it said in my voice. "I've been trapped for so long. But now, thanks to you, I'm free. And you, well, I'm sure you'll get used to it eventually." After all, I did. As the creature wearing my face turned and walked away, I tried to scream, to move, to do anything. But I was trapped, a prisoner in oils and canvas, forced to watch as some otherworldly being stole my life. Days passed, maybe weeks, it's hard to tell time when you're trapped in a painting. I watched helplessly as the entity wearing my face lived my life. It went to my job, talked to my friends, even called my parents. And all the while, I could do nothing but silently scream from within my canvas prison. But slowly, I began to notice something. The entity wasn't just living my life, it was improving it. My struggling writing career suddenly took off, with publishers fighting over my latest manuscript. My perpetually empty bank account started to fill up. Even my appearance seemed to improve, my body becoming fitter, my clothes more stylish. At first, I was confused. Why would this creature that had stolen my life work so hard to make it better? But then I realized this wasn't kindness. This was preparation. One evening, the entity brought a woman home, Sarah, a gorgeous redhead I'd had a crush on for months but never had the courage to ask out. As they laughed and flirted, the entity's eyes flicked to the painting to me, and I saw the cruel amusement there. It was showing off, rubbing in how much better it was at being me than I had ever been. That's when I understood the game. The entity wasn't content with simply stealing a life. It wanted to take a life and live it better than the original owner ever could. And once it had achieved that, once it had reached the peak of success and happiness in one life, it would move on to the next victim. I had to find a way to stop it, to warn someone. But how could I, trapped as I was in this painted prison? As I pondered my impossible situation, a thought struck me. If I had been pulled into the painting, replacing the previous occupant, where had that original man gone? Was he now free, walking around in the world with a stolen face, looking for his next victim? How long had this cycle been going on? These questions haunted me as I watched the entity continue to excel in my stolen life. But little did I know, the true horror was yet to come. For the entity had plans that would make my imprisonment seem like a mercy compared to what awaited its next victim. Months passed, and I watched in silent agony as the entity wearing my face achieved everything I had ever dreamed of. My novel became a bestseller. Or rather, the thing pretending to be me was invited to book signings, interviews, even a few minor awards ceremonies. Sarah, the woman I had admired from afar, was now my girlfriend. But as my stolen life reached new heights, I began to notice a change in the entity's behavior. It became restless, its eyes constantly darting around as if searching for something. Or someone. Then came the day of the art exhibition. The entity had been invited as a guest of honor, my newfound literary fame opening doors I had never imagined. As it mingled with the crowd, I saw its gaze lock onto a young man standing alone by an abstract painting. He was unremarkable at first glance, average height, mousy brown hair, glasses. But there was something in his eyes, a spark of creativity and ambition that I recognized all too well. It was the same look I used to see in the mirror, back when I still had a reflection. The entity approached him, wearing my most charming smile. "Fascinating piece, isn't it?" it said, nodding towards the painting. The young man startled, then smiled shyly. "Oh, yes. I'm not sure I understand it, but it's intriguing." "Art doesn't always need to be understood to be appreciated," the entity replied smoothly. "I'm James, by the way." It extended my hand, and I wanted to scream a warning as the young man shook it. "Alex," he replied. "I'm actually an aspiring artist myself, though nothing good enough for a place like this yet." The entity's eyes gleamed with predatory interest. "Is that so? You know, I have quite an eye for talent. Perhaps you'd like to show me some of your work sometime?" Alex's face lit up. "Really? That would be amazing." As they exchanged numbers, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with my painted prison. I knew with sickening certainty that I was watching the entity select its next victim. Over the next few weeks, I observed as the entity cultivated a friendship with Alex. It visited his small studio apartment, admired his paintings, offered encouragement and advice. All the while, Alex blossomed under the attention, his confidence growing along with his talent. But there was something else happening, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Sometimes, when Alex wasn't looking, I'd see the entity performing strange rituals. It would draw symbols on the backs of Alex's canvases, or whisper incantations while touching his paintbrushes. Once, I saw it slip a small, oddly shaped stone into Alex's paint box. The stone seemed to glow faintly, and I could have sworn I heard whispers emanating from it. As the entity's preparations continued, I noticed changes in Alex's artwork. His paintings became darker, more surreal. Twisted faces peered out from shadowy backgrounds. Landscapes warped in impossible ways. And in every piece, hidden somewhere, was a pair of coal black eyes. Alex didn't seem to notice these changes. He was too caught up in his newfound success. Galleries were suddenly interested in his work. Critics praised his bold new direction. But I could see the toll it was taking on him. He looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes. Sometimes, he'd stare at his own paintings with a mixture of fear and confusion, as if he couldn't quite remember creating them. Then came the day I had been dreading. The entity invited Alex to its home. "I have something I want to show you," it said, leading Alex to where I hung on the wall. I think you'll find it fascinating. Alex's eyes widened as he took in the painting me. Wow, he breathed. That's incredible. The eyes, they seem so alive. The entity smirked. It's my most prized possession. Would you like to know its secret? As Alex leaned in closer, captivated by the painting, the entity's form began to shimmer and distort. To my horror, I saw its features starting to shift, molding themselves to match Alex's. Alex stumbled back. What's happening? The next step in your artistic journey, the entity said, its voice changing to match Alex's. Don't fight it. Soon, you'll see the world as you've never seen it before. I wanted to shout, to warn Alex to run, but I could only watch in mute terror as the entity grabbed him. There was a flash of light, a swirl of colors, and then I wasn't alone in the painting anymore. Alex's confused, terrified face stared up from beside me, his mouth open in a silent scream. Outside the canvas, the entity admired its new reflection, a perfect copy of Alex. Don't worry, it said to us, adjusting Alex's glasses on its new face. I'll take good care of your life. Better than you ever could. And who knows? Maybe someday, someone will free you too. As the entity walked away, leaving us trapped in our painted prison, I turned my attention to Alex. Somehow, impossibly, I could hear his thoughts, feel his terror and confusion. What's happening? His mind screamed. Where am I? Who are you? I didn't know how to comfort him, how to explain the horrifying reality of our situation. But I knew I had to try. Because now, Alex was all I had. And together, perhaps we could find a way to stop this cycle of theft and imprisonment before the entity claimed its next victim. Time lost all meaning in our painted prison. Alex and I couldn't speak, couldn't move, but our minds were somehow linked. We shared our stories, our fears, our desperate hopes for escape. And as we did, something strange began to happen. The painting started to change. At first, it was subtle. The background, once a nondescript blur, began to take shape. Rolling hills appeared, then a distant forest, then a winding river. It was as if our shared consciousness was expanding the world within the canvas. Then our own forms began to shift. No longer were we static portraits, but full bodies capable of movement within the confines of our painted world. We could walk along the river, sit beneath the trees, even feel the ghostly sensation of wind on our faces. But with this newfound freedom came a terrifying revelation. We weren't alone. From the shadows of the forest emerged others, dozens, perhaps hundreds of trapped souls. Men and women from different eras, all victims of the entity's endless cycle of theft and imprisonment. An elderly man in Victorian garb approached us. Welcome, he said, his voice echoing in our minds. We've been waiting for you. Waiting? I asked, startled to find I could speak. What do you mean? The old man smiled sadly. You're the first dual imprisonment in centuries. It's changed the painting's power dynamics. Can you feel it? And I could. There was a thrumming energy in the air, a sense of potential I couldn't quite grasp. Who are you? Alex asked. How long have you been here? I am or was Jeremiah Blackwood, painter and occultist. I created this cursed canvas in 1876, seeking immortality. But the entity tricked me, trapped me in my own creation. I've been here ever since, watching victim after victim fall prey to my folly. As Jeremiah spoke, the painted world around us shifted and changed, reflecting the memories he shared. We saw glimpses of his life, his obsession with the occult, his quest for eternal life, the fateful night he completed the painting. I thought I had discovered the secret to transferring consciousness, Jeremiah explained. A way to move from body to body, living countless lives. But I didn't understand the price. The scene before us showed Jeremiah painting the final strokes on the canvas. As he did, a dark mist seemed to seep from the paint. The dark mist swirled around Jeremiah, and we watched in horror as it coalesced into a shadowy figure. The entity. It was a parasite, Jeremiah continued, his voice heavy with regret. A being from beyond our reality, drawn by my spell. It needed a host, a way to enter our world. And I provided the perfect vessel. We saw the entity lunge at Jeremiah, merging with him. For a moment, two faces overlapped, Jeremiah's and the gaunt visage I'd first seen in the antique shop. Then Jeremiah was gone, sucked into the painting, while the entity wore his face in the real world. Since then, it's been jumping from victim to victim, Jeremiah explained. Each time it takes a new host, it grows stronger, learning from each life it steals. But why? Alex asked, his mental voice trembling. What does it want? Jeremiah's eyes darkened. To consume. To experience. It feeds on the essence of its victims, on their memories, their emotions, their potential. Each life it lives makes it more powerful, more human, and more hungry. I felt a chill run through me. And now it's out there, living Alex's life. Jeremiah nodded gravely. Yes. And when it's done, when it's experienced everything Alex's life has to offer, it will move on to the next victim. Unless we stop it. Stop it? I echoed. How? We're trapped in here. Perhaps not as trapped as we thought, Jeremiah replied. Your dual imprisonment has changed things. The painting's magic is unstable now. We may have a chance to break free. Hope surged through me, quickly tempered by suspicion. If that's true, why haven't you tried this before? Jeremiah's expression turned grim. Because the risk is enormous. If we fail, we won't just remain trapped here. Our souls will be obliterated, erased from existence itself. A heavy silence fell over the painted world. The stakes were clear, a chance at freedom, at stopping the entity once and for all, but at the risk of total annihilation. As Alex and I exchanged glances, a silent understanding passed between us. We had to try. Not just for ourselves, but for all the souls trapped here, and for all the potential victims yet to come. We'll do it, I said firmly. Whatever it takes. Jeremiah nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Then let us begin. But be warned, the entity will not give up its power easily. And the battle we're about to face will test the very limits of your sanity. Over the next hours, days, time had little meaning here. Jeremiah taught us about the painting's magic, about the weaknesses in its structure that our dual presence had created. We learned to manipulate the painted world around us, to draw on the combined energy of all the trapped souls. All the while, through our tenuous connection to the real world, we caught glimpses of the entity living Alex's life. We saw it charm gallery owners, create haunting works of art, begin to make a name for itself in the art world. But we also saw darker moments, strange rituals performed in the dead of night, whispered conversations with shadowy figures, and always, that hungry look in its eyes as it searched for its next victim. When we were as ready as we'd ever be, Jeremiah gathered all the souls in the painted world. It's time, he announced. Focus your energy, your will. Think of freedom, of justice, of stopping the entity once and for all. As one, we began to concentrate. The painted world around us began to warp and distort. Colors swirled, reality bent. I felt a tremendous pressure, as if I were being squeezed from all sides. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, we broke through. We found ourselves in a void, a space between realities. And there, before us, was the entity, but not as Alex or me or any single victim. It was a writhing mass of faces, all its victims merged into one horrific form. "You cannot stop me," it hissed with 1,000 voices. "I am eternal. I am hunger itself." The battle that followed defied description. We fought with will and memory, trying to reclaim our stolen essence. The entity lashed out with tendrils of darkness, trying to drag us back into imprisonment. Reality itself seemed to tear and mend around us as we struggled. Just when it seemed hopeless, when the entity's power threatened to overwhelm us, I felt a surge of strength. The combined will of all the trapped souls flowed through Alex and me. With a final, desperate push, we tore into the entity's defenses. It screamed, a sound that echoed across dimensions. Its form began to unravel, faces peeling away like pages from a book. I caught glimpses of lives unlived, potentials unfulfilled, as each stolen soul was freed. There was a blinding flash, a sensation of falling, scattering across time and space. I awoke with a gasp, lying on the floor of the antique shop. The painting was gone. The shopkeeper stood over me, eyes gleaming black. "Interesting choice," he said, but it wasn't his voice. It was Jeremiah's. "You've broken the cycle, but at what cost?" I stumbled to my feet, mind reeling. "What do you mean? Where's Alex? Where are the others?" Jeremiah smiled sadly. "Gone. Scattered across realities. The entity too. And now, the power is yours." I looked down at my hands. They shimmered, able to take any form I desired. "You become what you sought to destroy," Jeremiah continued. "The new entity. The new hunger. How long before you seek your first victim, I wonder?" Horror washed over me as I felt the first stirrings of an alien hunger. The desire to steal, to become, to consume identities. "No," I whispered. "I won't. I can't." But even as I spoke, my eyes were drawn to a young woman browsing the shop's shelves. I could almost taste her essence, imagine how it would feel to wear her life. "Well then," Jeremiah said, fading away. "Let the game begin anew." As the hunger grew, I realized the true horror. In destroying the monster, I had become it. And somewhere out there, scattered across realities, were fragments of Alex and all the other victims watching, waiting for their chance to break the cycle once more. But would they be strong enough to resist the hunger when their time came? Only time would tell. And I had all the time in the world. As I stand here, in this antique shop that's now become my hunting ground, I can't help but wonder about the nature of my existence. Am I still the writer who stumbled upon a cursed painting? Or am I the entity, reborn? Or perhaps I'm something new entirely, a fusion of human and otherworldly hunger? I've tried to resist the urge to consume, to steal lives. But with each passing day, the hunger grows stronger. I find myself eyeing potential victims, imagining slipping into their lives like a perfectly tailored suit. And yet, there's a part of me that still fights, still hopes for redemption. I've taken to painting again, creating portraits that seem to come alive. Each one is a window, a potential escape route for the fragments of souls still trapped in the void. Sometimes, late at night, I hear whispers from these paintings. Alex's voice, Jeremiah's, and others I don't recognize. They plead for freedom, for another chance at life. But I know that to free them would be to unleash this cycle of hunger and theft upon the world once more. So I remain here, teetering on the edge between humanity and monstrous hunger, painting gateways that I dare not open. And I wait, wondering if someday, someone will stumble into my shop and notice something odd about the proprietor's eyes, a hint of otherworldly hunger, a glimpse of endless lives consumed. Will they be the one to finally end this cycle? Or will they become the next victim in an eternal game of identity theft and cosmic horror? Only time will tell. And in this limbo between realities, watching potential victims browse my curated collection of cursed objects, I have nothing but time. The bell above the door jingles. A new customer enters. I smile, feeling the hunger rise within me. Welcome, I say, my voice carrying echoes of countless stolen lives. How may I help you today? The game begins anew. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more horror stories.